Jose, we're continuing today's Mishna Yomi. We find ourselves in Moed Katan, Perek Aleph, Mishnayos Zayin through Ches. Mishnayos 7 through 8. So Mishnah Zayin says as follows: Ein nosim noshin b'moed. We do not get married on Chalamayid. And the Bartanur explains why is that? Because in Ma'arvin simcha b'simcha. We do not go ahead and mix one simcha with another. Since there is a mitzvah of v'samachta b'chagecha, to rejoice on Yom Tiv, so we don't go ahead and mix the simcha of Yom Tiv with the mitzvah of marriage. In other words, the idea is that if one were to get married on Chalamayid, the marriage, the simcha of the marriage, as beautiful as it is, would detract from our focus on the simcha of Yom Tiv. Lo basulos, v'lo almanos, v'lo miyadmin. This is true whether it's a first marriage, a woman is a basula, a virgin, or whether, again, she's a widow, it's a second marriage, or v'lo miyadmin. And you can't do yibum. Remember, again, yibum is the marriage where if a brother dies without children, so the surviving brother goes ahead and marries the widow. We can't do that on Chalamayid either. Why? Because ultimately, again, as we mentioned before, this is a simcha. Marriage is a beautiful simcha, but on Yom Tiv, one is supposed to be focused on the simcha of the Yom Tiv and not dilute the simcha of Yom Tiv with any other simcha. The one exception to this is one could remarry his divorcee. If a couple got divorced and then they decide to get remarried, that is permitted on Chalamayid. So it's interesting. So the Bartanura says, "De'ena simcha kol kach." Because it's not such a big simcha. In other words, the idea being, of course, I'm sure it's a beautiful simcha, but at the end of the day, because a person is remarrying someone who they were already married to, it's not the same level of simcha, and therefore be permitted. A woman could go ahead and take care. Tachshita literally means jewelry, but here in this particular context, the Bartanura explains that she can take care of all of her cosmetic needs. So whatever she needs to do cosmetically for herself to make herself feel and look attractive, one is permitted to do so. Rabbi Huda Omer lo sasud mipnei shenivuhu lo. Rabbi Huda, however, gives one exception. He says that she cannot apply lime. Lime was used as a depilatory hair removal. So one can't, Rabbi Yehuda says you can't do that on Chalamayid. Why? Because ultimately, the act of putting on the lime, putting on the depilatory, apparently it hurts, it causes the skin to redden, even though at the end of the day it removes the hair, which is a positive byproduct. But because the process is uncomfortable, Rabbi Huda says that a woman should not do this on a Chalamayid itself. Beautiful. That is Mishnah Zayin. We now come to Mishnah Ches. Hedyot Tofer Kidarko. So remember again, as we discussed at the introduction of this Masechta, so halacha l'maisa, when you have a particular need on Chalamayid, one is permitted to go ahead and do malacha for that need. However, again, the Gemara explains, the Mishnah is going to explain, that when you perform a particular malacha, it must be done in a non-professional capacity. In other words, there are two different ways you could do a malacha. You could do something that's called a maisa uman or a maisa hedyot. Maisa uman means a professional form of labor, or maisa hedyot, which means a non-professional, a regular, unskilled way, a regular person without specific training would go ahead and do this malacha. So one is permitted on Chalamayid to utilize maisa hedyot, or called unskilled labor, but one would not be permitted to go ahead and do something in the form of a maisa uman. So what's an example of this? Ha-hedyot tofer kedarko, v'ha-uman machlif. So let's say a person needs to sew something. So they need to sew something on Chalamayid. So the halacha is an unskilled person, which means, let's say I'm not a tailor, I'm not a seamstress, so I just sew, in a regular, unskilled, normal fashion. That's permitted on Chalamayid. However, what happens if, let's say, the tailor or the seamstress, who's a professional, needs to sew something on Chalamayid? What do? Machliv. Machliv means they use irregular or uneven stitches. That's the idea. It's using irregular or uneven stitch. So they do something again on Chalamayid, which is a departure from the way they would normally do the malach. Rabbi Yossi says, Af mimatchim. Rabbi Yossi says that halacha l'maisa, well, the truth is, Bartanura removes the af. He says mematchin. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the umisargin esanitos. Misargin es hamitos means as follows. The way their beds used to work is, let's say instead of a box spring, what they would have is they would tie a bunch of ropes together and then put a mattress on top of the ropes. So the Mishnah says, Misargin es hamitos, the Bartunura says, Orgin osa bechaval and shesi va'ariv. You could tie ropes in a crisscross fashion in order to go ahead and support the mattress. That is permitted. That is permitted. And again, the Bartunura explains because this is considered to be a maisa hedyot and not a maisa uman. This isn't considered to be a professional form of labor, therefore it's permitted. Rabbi Yossi says, Mematrin. Now Rabbi Yossi disagrees on the beginning of the Mishnah, whereas the beginning of the Mishnah said that if you need to sew, you could do so, but you just have to do so like a maisa hedyot and not like a maisa uman. Rabbi Yossi disagrees and he says you're not allowed to go ahead and tighten. You could actually, if you look at the Bartunura is matrin haya orug ze yamim rabim v'rafuach avalam matrin avalom misagrin. Excuse me. So the Bartunura says Rabbi Yossi is arguing on the bed case, and Rabbi Yossi says that halacha l'maisa in the bed case, if the ropes of the bed were tied and then became loose, you could tighten them. However, halacha l'maisa, you would not be permitted to go ahead and tie them together lechatchila from the beginning on Chalamayid itself. So he allows you to tighten things that were loose, but would not allow you to go ahead and tie them from the beginning. In other words, to tie them for the first time on Chalamayid itself. Alright, we'll stop over here for today. Shkayach everyone, will continue Meretz Hashem with the next shir with Mishnayos Tes and Yud. Wishing everyone a wonderful day.